We're here with special guest doctor and brain surgeon Jason. I wanted to do this interview today just to let people know, to give people value on some of the frontline stories of people that are on the front lines and doing the work. So, Jason, thanks for being here today. A little bit on your background and what you do now, so they could get kind of an idea.
Sure. So first off, David, thanks for having me. It's truly a pleasure. Definitely good to see you as well. I practice neurosurgery here in Lafayette, Louisiana. I've been part of the FDA for now a couple of years. I'm heavily involved, obviously, with the COVID situation in our local hospitals here. And I also have meetings with not only the FDA, but portions of the CDC and the Society of Brain Mapping and Therapeutics. So we're heavily involved. We're certainly on the front line, and some things have definitely changed as a society. That's going to change us forever. So I'm very happy to be here to go over those things with you.
And what your day-to-day looks like right now.
Just before I get in my car, I put a mask on so that I'm protected once I face the outside atmosphere. I get in my vehicle, I drive to work, whether it's my office or the hospital, and there's a screening process at all of the hospitals here. It's so vigilant, in a way, I should say, and that patients are there by themselves. They really can't visit with their loved ones until they've been released from the hospital. So hospitals are doing all they can to restrict outside opportunities for the virus to get in, and also other germs. So we enter through special doors, and as you enter, prior to entering, they ask you a series of questions. Things like, have you had a fever? Are you taking any sort of medications that could mask a fever? Have you traveled somewhere? Have you had any sort of sick contacts? If those answers are all no, then they measure or check your temperature, and they want to make sure that you don't have a fever. Once that's done, then you're allowed to enter the hospital. And once you're in the hospital, at least here, we all typically wear masks when we're ambulating or walking throughout the hospital. I can tell you that I'm primarily consulted on people with neurosurgical issues. So whether it's things like a brain tumor in the brain or some sort of ruptured aneurysm or spinal situation, but those people also are testing positive for this virus as well. So I'm having to interview them and take the necessary precautions to protect myself in those situations. My last 3 craniotomies where I had to enter the brain, those patients actually were had or suspected to be positive for the COVID-19. So special precautions had to be taken in the way of wearing an N95 mask and also wearing particular gown to be protected. It's weird bringing people in for surgery now. So we aren't doing any elective cases. They're all either urgent or emergent. After the procedure, I'm calling the family members. I don't even meet, or, I'm talking to them over the phone, which is so weird. Usually I'm there in a conference room and I'm talking to them, to tell them how the surgery went and everything's fine. But now it's over the phone. It's so really impersonal. And I understand we have to do that, but that's some of the dilemmas that we're under.
Dr. Jason, he also played Division I basketball, played with Shaq at LSU. And so one of the things that I talk about a lot to people is having a correct mindset. So when you're going into surgery, especially with this going on, what is kind of the mindset you have?
I think that's a very good point, David. The advantages, that I do have as being a former athlete is that I carry a lot of those things into the operating room with me. It allows me to function better. It allows my mindset to have, the mindset that whatever happens, I'm going to follow through with this. And, you leave it all on the table, essentially. And it helps with your stress response. And I think in the situation, when you look across the landscape and of how people are reacting to this, the stress level is just really elevated to a level where that becomes a danger as well. And so the second and third waves of this are going to be related more so to the stress and how people deal with it, how inappropriately and appropriately people deal with the stress from this situation.
What are you hearing on maybe a possible time?
Sure. So the numbers are really frightening in that it took us 67 days to get to 100,000. It took us about 11 days to get to 200,000 and 4 days to get to 300,000, et cetera, et cetera. We're now over 1.9 million worldwide and just over 118 deaths worldwide. And those are numbers that we think there are multipliers of maybe 2 and or 3 because we don't have all the data from other countries for whatever reason. Those things weren't disclosed. In terms of looking at where the numbers are today, things are starting to go down. In other words, we're finally seeing that the peak take a more of a flat line, so to speak. And so the numbers we're going to see this week going forward, as long as people continue to follow the CDC recommendations, and that is washing your hands for at least 20 seconds or so because viruses are very fragile. Also social distancing, these things are helping. And, and also things that if you become symptomatic, wearing the appropriate protection, wearing a mask, then we're going to continue to see that decline. Now, the numbers are going to still come up a little bit, but those are people that are still hospitalized or just recently hospitalized. But we are seeing that I think things are going to go back to normal, in the month of May. Now, normal meaning it's going to be a new mentality. Right. And that this, I think we should take the mentality that, we should always wash our hands. We should always kind of be wary of what's out there. So in terms of moving forward, things will never be like they were. But in terms of some normalcy, I think next month we'll definitely see that.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And so many people talk about the negative things that are going to come out of this, but I always like to just look at some kind of shining light if I can. And I think that coming out of this, the mentality of just being overall, practicing better hygiene and being cleaner, that's going to be something that's going to help a lot of the other sicknesses that might be out there.
Totally agree with you. We're not going to get out of this crisis with any vaccination. Everybody knows that. There's not going to be a vaccine that's going to come in and sweep everything away. That's down the road. But what's going to get us out of this is, as you said, washing your hands, practicing good hygiene, practicing some form of social distancing, and also, just having a cleaner life, essentially. That's going to get us out of this. Staying hydrated, things like that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. People who might be feeling overwhelmed or stressed right now, what kind of tips do you think you could give them in terms of just kind of de-stressing and then looking at this from a new set of eyes?
Sure. So first off, I think the social distancing, washing of hands, all those things are definitely working. So people need to know that. The initial numbers that Dr. Fonsi thought were going to be almost 300,000, he actually dropped that to 60,000, at least for the United States. So we know that the measures that we're taking are certainly working. So I think that we are coming to a point where we can start seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, but we still have to continue doing what we're doing. Yeah. The other thing that I would just caution people on is that don't lose sight of what the stress can do to people. So if you're around your loved ones and people seem overly stressed, understand that people deal with stress a little bit differently and that this is going to pass. Our concerns going forward of the second and third wave also include things like depression and anxiety and what that leads to. Ultimately, some people, unfortunately, might try to take their lives. But keeping your loved ones close, that's going to get us through this as well. I think by the summer months, this virus is going to burn itself out. The virus we know can't live within, it typically is sensitive beyond 86 degrees. So given some of that information, knowing that washing your hands will definitely destroy this virus, if you're washing your hands, you're staying hydrated, and you're practicing appropriate social distancing and wearing your mask around people that might be coughing, recognize that the initial reports that the cough can only last up to 6 feet. It can actually go a little bit further. So I think being hypervigilant about those things until the crisis finally dies off And again, it's not going to be too much longer. I think we're going to be in great shape.
Yeah. And that's one thing I wanted to, not only for people who are listening in, but also for myself, because uh, I know how the news works and I know how headlines work. So I always go to the people I know who I have access to who are in the front lines. My sister's a nurse, and she was telling me similar things. So thanks for coming on and giving some insight. Thanks for giving the recommendations. For people watching, for mindset is your mind and body are connected. So the healthier you treat yourself, you're going to see twofold. So one of the things I recommend to people who want to stay de-stressed is keep moving. That's one of the things that really helps me out. So any kind of form of exercise you could do, whether that's low impact yoga or Tai Chi, whether that's going outside for a bike ride or a run, all the while staying safe, I think is really going to go far, because like Dr. Jason said, there's going to be other waves, and it's not just going to be a virus. There's going to be, like you said, depression and other mental illnesses and things that come from this. So the better you take care of yourself now while you're in quarantine, the better you will come out of this. And the analogy I used is we're coming to a hill, and it's like you're riding a bike. And when you're about to come up the hill, what do? You start pedaling faster to gain more momentum to get up that hill. So I think the more things you could do now while we have the time is going to be very beneficial for these second and third waves also.
That's a great point, David. Really preparing your body and as healthy as you can be is certainly one of the best ways to combat this. The healthier people are always going to do better. Absolutely, I agree with you.
Right. And are there any last, I think we gave some of the listeners just, if anything, just a breath of fresh air, knowing that somebody at your level on the front lines is thinking that we've seen the peak and that we're going to go into the end of this, given great health tips that are easily actionable and you can do every day. Any last kind of health tips or things you would say to people, even if it's not related to COVID-19? Any last thoughts or words from you here today?
I think that engaging in events like this that you're doing, really stressing health and wellness. Can't say enough about health and wellness. That's always going to carry you through almost any type of storm. This is a storm that we're going to weather, and really the healthier, the more hydrated, the people that are eating cleaner and doing cleaner things are always going to prevail. This thing's going to burn itself out. There's going to be something in the future. So as you said, prepare now, and you'll be able to weather those storms as they come.
What are you doing for your workouts these days?
Yeah, sure. So outside of surgery and my active practice, at home, I'm exercising, I'm stretching. If I'm going around the block, it might be at kind of late night or late evening hours when there's little to no one outside. I might go for a jog in that circumstance. So I'm doing some things that are active. I have a jump rope and things like that. I'm not doing anything heavy duty, but I'm keeping my body in motion. And that's going to help your lungs. It's going to help your circulatory system. It's going to help your liver, etc. And so all those organs are going to be well in tune in the event that you encounter this thing. 80% of people that encounter this typically have very mild to absolutely no symptoms. Mm-hmm. It's that 20%, which is a big, significant demographic worldwide. That if their bodies aren't appropriately ready for something like this, they're going to essentially run into some dangers.
One of my mentors always used to say, if you don't take the time out now, you're going to take the time out and pay for it later. So you might as well start working on we have a pause. And for some people, it's a really good pause to start incorporating those new habits and rhythms into their life, so that, if there is a second or third wave or whatever else, God forbid, happens in their life, they're going to be more prepared for it. And can you speak to the reports of people being infected with the virus and showing no symptoms, and how should we look at this? I think we answered that a little bit, but if you wanted to kind of take it a little further.
Sure. So people that are have been infected and are not demonstrating any symptoms, and there's kind of two courts of that. One, on one side, you have those that have been verified that they're actually positive, and so those people have to quarantine. It's safe for them to quarantine. The others that we don't know, that's the dangers. You're never really going to know because they're not very symptomatic. If they cough or sneeze once or twice, then certainly everyone's certainly those viruses become opportunistic for people that aren't protected. So what I do every day as I leave my house, I wear a mask, and I'm going to wear that mask until we actually get to the point to where it's now safer. And we actually are seeing a decline and a flat line from that it's actually plateauing now. But until really the next week or so, I'm going to continue to wear the mask really everywhere I go.
Yeah, and that's something I'm going to do because I have masked, but I haven't been wearing it. So, just talking to you now, that's something I'm going to start doing. And also, one thing to help people is to connect with your network, just like we're doing here today. There's plenty of people that you can, go through your phone, and people you haven't texted or talked to in a while, or video chatted for a while. Do that, because this pause, one thing it's let me know is that there's an unbelievable network that I'm connected to, that wanted to hear from me, and I just didn't have the time, or it kind of skipped over my mind. So including what we're doing today, because we haven't talked in a while, and it's so good to catch up again and share some front lines information with people. So Jason, thanks so much for coming on, and all the people following and watching, we've got some more great interviews lined up with Jason, because he is someone with a ton of knowledge and experience. So Jason, thanks for coming on, and I wish you the best. Keep staying safe, keep saving people, and keep fighting the good fight in the front line.
Absolutely. Thank you, David. Appreciate it.